So when we talk about Woodrow Wilson, okay, most important things to remember, and I know that we already covered this last class, but I'm just going to recover it today in this class. So with Woodrow Wilson becomes the president during World War I. That's the most crucial thing to be able to know about him. Now, Woodrow Wilson originally actually went and was elected as the president under the banner of "We will not go to war." So he actually started as what's called neutral. He did not want to go to war. He did not want to enter this war. That was his goal. Now, he gets elected into this, and he has to kind of become the president to keep us out of the war. Now, when we talk about this as well, and we talk about this turn towards war, if you could, again, bracket this, and I think I told you it last time, if you put, like, American causes, that would be great. Okay? These are the causes of why America went to war. And the most important ones that I would do is I would underline the word U-boat, Lusitania, and the Zimmerman note. And in particular, if you would star the Zimmerman note, that tends to be the one that is the most referenced on the AP exam. And in my opinion, it's also pretty much the most important reason why we go into the war. So let's cover these really quickly. And I know we've already talked a little bit about these, but I just want to review for those who have been absent. So remember a U-boat. A U-boat is a German submarine. Okay, that's the most basic way to be able to say it. Now, German U-boats were very difficult to be able to find under radar. So as they went along, they attempted to be able to basically get past all the radar systems. And our radar systems, by the way, at this time were really poor. Most of our radar systems were actually just like looking out through the little eyeglass and being able to see things. Our radar systems becomes a lot more intense in the Second War. Now, these U-boats, though, are going to come along to what's known as the Lusitania. Now, if you guys remember, the Lusitania was a passenger ship. It was going from America over into Ireland. Now, remember, there's tons of Americans on the ship. A U-boat comes along, torpedoes it, and the Lusitania sinks and thousands die. Well, the thing, though, is do you guys remember what the Lusitania actually had on board? Weapons, right? Yeah.
So did the Germans, know that there were, a bunch of passengers on that ship? Were they just, didn't care?
Oh, they knew. But you have to realize is that according to really the rules of war, anything's open game if it has to do with warfare. So there's a difference between going and shooting, for instance, right now, the other day, Trump ordered and has sent, and it's there right now, the very first carrier, and it's docked right outside of North Korean waters, and it dropped anchor. And that was a huge step, because that's saying, okay, we are prepared to go to war if necessary with you. Now let's pretend that a little cruise ship is tugging along and wants to go up to that ship and it's oh, look how pretty the ship is, and it's going past it. Which one is it going to shoot at? It's going to shoot at the military vessel. Now what happens though if that cruise ship also has 20 million guns preparing for the war? Now it becomes a weapon of war, and now you can shoot that object. Does that make sense? So they knew there were passengers on it, but it's also a casualty of war. I mean, we had the London bombings that killed a couple hundred people over several years. They knew what they were doing, but in war, it's war. It's kind of one of those things, remember when we talked about the harshness of war? So, following the sinking of the Lusitania, though, people began to advocate for going into World War I, a move from, and this is the important, neutrality to interventionism, which you should have written last time, but if you didn't, neutrality to interventionism. This is the idea of going from when you are remaining neutral to moving into actual warfare. Now, when we talk about the Lusitania, we talk about the Lusitania in the fact that the Lusitania becomes the calling card of this war. So it's kind of like Pearl Harbor. Or if you guys remember when we said to hell with Spain, remember the Maine? Do you guys remember that little flag? That's the idea here. The Lusitania becomes now we must do something. Our daughters and their daughters are dying, and the sinking ship. They didn't publish that there was weapons on the ship, though. They just accepted it and moved on. Now, yeah.
What is it, the
neutrality to interventionism. It means intervening in this European affair. So, yeah.
Sorry. Just
You're fine.
when did they find out about, when did the public find out about the weapons? After the war?
After the war.
Okay.
Through declassifying secret documents. Yeah. It's one of those things that you just keep secret. It's oh yeah, all these people died, but we were also hosting this here. So it's kind of when you get into like in the war of Afghanistan a couple years ago, they detonated a bomb, and there was like, it was called the Afghan bomb. It was actually built by Raytheon out in West Valley, and it was the largest bomb ever made. And when it exploded, it killed 100 people. And when it was first reported, it was America builds this giant bomb, kills 100 innocent civilians. Well, then the United States comes out and says the place where those people were working at was a nuclear factory, and we were bombing a nuclear factory. So it's one of those things now, in that case, that makes America in a good light. But, I mean, in this case, it would have made America look terrible, right? Why are you shipping? And it would have broken our own laws, because we had the Neutrality Acts that said that we could not intervene into the war. Does that make sense? Yeah, we actually had acts, they were called the Neutrality Acts, that said that we could not enter into the war. It's not in there, but it's also in the Second World War. Any more questions about this? Okay, nifty. So in terms of all of this, now we're also not only seeing the death of Lusitania, but we're also seeing the carnage, the massive death, chemical warfare, trench warfare, and we're starting to have people say we have to go to war. Now, when we talk about the massive death that you're seeing examples like this. Now, this is a regiment that was out of Newfoundland, which is up in Canada. Now, this regiment, if you got drafted into the war, which Canada was in the war before us because they were part of Britain, but when you went into the war, all the men of like 18 to 25 were drafted. Well, in this single city, all the men were drafted. So 100%, or I think it was 85% of the men in that town were eligible, so they were all drafted. 100% of them were killed. So imagine in a single battle, your entire city of men is wiped out. That's kind of the impact that you can see from this carnage. Now, this is the one, though, that makes the difference, and it's the Zimmerman note. This, for America, is the tipping point of going into war. Now, the Zimmerman note was a secret telegram from Germany to Mexico, and you will need to know it's Germany to Mexico. Now, a newspaper intercepts this telegram and publishes it in the newspaper, and this is huge, okay? Basically, what they say is this. So this is from Germany to Mexico. We propose an alliance on the following basis with Mexico, that we shall make war together and together make peace. We shall give general financial support, and it is understood that Mexico is to reconquer the lost territory in New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona. So, what does that mean that Mexico and Germany are going to do together? They're going to ally. They're going to fight, and who they're going to fight against? The United States. And if Mexico does this, what do they get back?
Texas.
All the land they lost. So, imagine if you had that. You find out, and not only does your government not find this note, it's found in a newspaper. And it's published that Germany planned to ally with Mexico and was almost on the brink of allying with them, and Mexico was going to invade from the south. Imagine if just one day Mexico starts invading America with Germany. And I know that sounds weird, but you got to realize the Mexican army was huge back then. It's a lot different now than it was back then. Right now they have a lot more problems. So anyways, the problem is, though, is that Americans are scared and they are fearful. And now we're going to switch into warfare. So that is the causes of America going into the war. So you need to grab out your little fun book. So let me explain what you're going to do in this section. So your next section is you have to figure out, why did America enter into the war? Okay? So what was America's cause of heading into the war? So you have your funtivity section. So remember, at the bottom now, so at the bottom, okay, in that box, you have to use a term. Hey. Good to see you again. Okay, so you have to use a term. You then have to define why that is a cause, and then you have to explain why it's a cause. So if you want to do Zimmerman note, the Lusitania, Uboats, yes.
That's in the little box.
Yes, so at the bottom, that's the little box. So your little box at the bottom should have 3 parts. Abby. Hope you're going somewhere fun. Hope you're going somewhere fun. I'm always jealous of when people leave.
Me too.
Yes.
I'm like, please let me.
Yes, it's the same exact format as what you did for the causes. So you should already have the middle one, the first two filled out, so you're doing the exact same thing for the other two. So again, you should be filling out the box with why America entered. Examples could include like Zimmerman note or the Lusitania. If you haven't been here before, those are some examples. You're doing it just like an LEQ. Yeah, you folded it wrong. That's okay though. Just have to do it there. So again, you're picking out a word such as one cause of America entering World War I is blank. Zimmerman note. The Zimmerman note was blank. This caused us to enter into World War I because blank. Okay? So you're just pretending like you're doing an essay. It was intercepted, I think it was the New York Times. It was intercepted by a newspaper. I'm almost 100% sure it was New York Times.
How do you do that?
Magic. Magic science.
Is there proof that it was real though? Because there's always that theory that like it was created by whoever. Yeah.
Like the same people who say the thing about, I mean, every single one, they say that. There's some people that say Pearl Harbor never happened, that it was staged photographs. Could it have been? Maybe. I would say most historians say it was real, but I think a lot of them say Mexico would have never done it because what is America going to do? They're just going to start bombing Mexico. Because Germany doesn't have to care. Germany's all the way over in freaking Europe. We're not going to be able to send our bombs right over, whereas a lot of our bomb-making factories were in Utah, Arizona, New Mexico. Send a plane over and you're good. I'm sorry, are you wanting to say something?
Okay, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So America, it feels like America already wanted to be in the war because they're supporting England with all those weapons, right? But then all they have to do is convince the public now, so they sent them.
Either way, we're in the war.
Yes.
Yeah. How can you tell if things were fake news stories back then? Was it just judgment or how can you have a cut of the source?
Well, the vast majority of people saw the New York Times and the New York Journal as basic law. So nowadays, where you see, I know it's different now, right? So the Associated Press, most people say right now, is the most trusted news source because it's a group of journalists that send everything out. So all of our sources here in America are typically based on the AP. Now, back then, the Associated Press was New York Times and the New York Journal. People read those things, and they were 100% convinced they were true. Were they? Well, we saw the yellow journalism before with the USS Maine. I think in this case, most people thought that the telegram was real, but a lot of it was judgment. A lot of things changed with the invention of the television because now you can't fake it anymore. And it's not until the 30s and the 20s that we can actually post pictures in newspapers. And once we have to prove things that aren't drawings, then it becomes a little bit more. But yeah, we have this problem a lot as it continues to go on and on and on and on. Does anybody over here have a question? Because I know I was ignoring some of you on accident. Yes.
So these two
Are based on your notes?
Yeah. So in terms of the historical context.
So historical context is anything you learned about imperialism. And then causes of why the world went is the MAIN. So you have to pick MAIN, which is on your notes. Okay? Don't forget to use color. And if you already are ended, maybe elevate it. Make it look nice. Why don't I just figure it out? Because if I want to be specific. Why did I put you? Who? For the record, I put who intercepted and it immediately said Zimmerman telegram. It's as if it knows who we're talking about. Although the other one was who intercepted Tom Brady the most times. So. Okay. So, this is what it says. British intelligence intercepted the Zimmerman telegram on February 27th. On February 28th, Wilson knew about it, but it was leaked immediately to the press and was leaked by the New York Times and Journal both in the morning hours of March 1st. It was intercepted by England, yeah. But what it was just saying, too, is that they were saying that it looks like when they transferred it to Wilson, people were already putting it to the newspapers. Because think about it, who's going to pay the most money, Wilson or some newspapers? America, right? I mean, we pay millions of dollars for, like, the simplest little thing.
Okay, but England wanted America involved, so that's why they leaked it to the press. They wanted American support. Oh, my God.
Oh, now you're in a conspiracy theory.
All we know is that it happened.
All you have to know is we're in the war.
Conspiracy.
Now, if you want to go in an essay in an LEQ and start saying, and this is a possible conspiracy theorist about the Zimmerman nose. I will tell you, I've seen people write stuff like that. Like there was one on the Cold War, and so somebody took that opportunity to write about how the moon landing didn't happen.
I'm sure the readers probably like it when they write things that are interesting.
I think they like it as they give you a 0. Remember the bingo boards?
Can you grade?
I can't grade yet. I have to wait one more year. Next year I can grade, but not this year.
I think you're the most qualified.
Thank you.
I quite agree.
I will give, oh wait, should I say I'll give everybody 6s on LEQs? Is that bad? I'll give everyone a 6 on LEQ and a 7 on a DBQ. And they won't question me.
Wait, are you going to stop becoming a teacher?
No, so how reading works is, so if I were to read, I would actually have to leave school here like 2 days early. But the reading happens usually around June 4th for a week. And literally for 6 days straight, you read essays from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m.
I'm going to tell you what.
And, well, so first off, they pay for your trip. And hello, it's in Tampa, Florida. What's in Tampa, Florida? Basically Disney World. So it's kind of like a free trip. And then they pay you $2,000.
Ooh, so you can't go to Disney World.
For 6 days?
Yeah, and you can change your flights to however long you want to stay. So I was just reading that somebody, for example, is from Hawaii and their family lives in the States. So they fly to Tampa, but then their return flight is a month later. So they can travel to the U.S. visiting their family because that's the only way they can pay for flights. Because the flights from Hawaii to Tampa are like $1,200.
Ooh, yikes. That's actually
So.
Can I just say the Archduke assassination? Can I draw that? Or
Yes, that's what this would be.
And then this is just like.
This is all imperialism. Take about 30 more seconds, 45 to 30 seconds.
What were the assignments that had no names on it? I don't think I put one.
Oh, by the way, if you want to be a no-namer, you can come up and look at this now. Put your name on it and throw it in the box.
Also, I'm going to be gone on Thursday.
Okay.
So I will watch the lecture.
Yes, I think it will be on Roaring Twenties, which is like a really fun lecture, but that's okay. That's like one of my favorite days. I know, and it relates.
Yeah, I know.
You can use the Great Gatsby in your AP exam.
Everything always is the same.
Yes.
Are you going to put the curve in for the test?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay.
Right now, I just have to catch up my other 2, and then I'm gonna. Yeah, so it's gonna be the same curve we talked about.
Do we only do American causes, not like the European?
So the European was in the other one. So this was European causes.
So like, is that good enough? Because like, I'm not the.
Do you see the difference between this one and this one?
I'm still coloring.
Okay.
Sorry.
Like we don't talk about like Wilhelm II.
But yeah, it's dainty.
Because now you can use that for either historical context or in your actual LEQ, but that's what we're talking about. Everything else from now on, you can use world references in your essays.
So I got a 0 on the populism assignment. I was wondering if that was like because I did a horrible job or if they just like never made
I must have missed yours because I know I saw it.
Okay.
I will make a note. Because I know I saw it. Because you write your name really small. And so it's easy to remember when I see yours. Yep. My husband likes your writing though, because you write a lot still. And so he's like, she could just write bigger and not have to write as much. I'm like, Mark, that's not how it works. She's still like knowing how to do things. Yeah. There's a lot there.
So I have a question about the AAP exam.
Yes.
If we read historical literature, like if we read
Yes.
Uncle Tom's Cabin, can we use that in our EQ if it happens to be them?
Yes.
Okay.
But the difference is you can't quote. So you can't use quotes in your LEQ. But you can use everything in your knowledge. Just remember that it's an LEQ and you have a limited time. So what some people do is when they read like The Great Gatsby, they'll just be like, let me tell you all the imagery of The Great Gatsby in the 1920s. And it's like, that's great, but now you've run out of time to write the rest of your essay. But yeah.
Can we turn this into the
Yes.
basket again? Sorry.
Yes.
So are we just going to spend one day on the Roaring Twenties?
We're going to do one day on the Roaring Twenties, and then we're going to do an activity that relates to the Roaring Twenties.
And will that be the class period after?
Yes, after.
I'm so sad that I haven't seen that.
It's okay though.
I'm sorry if I said this, but like, have you read the rewrite essays yet?
No.
Okay.
This weekend.
Okay.
This weekend they will be 100% in.
So I just found this in my binder. I guess I teared off part of my packet. Can I still turn this in?
Yes. It's fine.
Where's my packet?
Yeah, your name's on it. Yes. So many people need me.
So, what was the reason it was so like impactful? Like, what?
Because your leader got assassinated. It's as if Canada assassinated Donald Trump, I can guarantee we would declare war. Because when your leader is assassinated...
So it was... Who did he lead? Like, who did he lead?
He was in Serbia, and the Serbian rebel group killed him. So they declared war on Serbia, and then Serbia's best friend, Russia, therefore declared war on Austria-Hungary. And then Germany... Yes. Okay, last one.
Have best friendship bracelets.
Aww, that's cute. I like that. Okay, coming back together. Okay, listen. We lost a little bit of time at the beginning. Okay, listen. We lost a little bit of time at the beginning of class, so we have to kind of like catch up a little bit. And there's a really like one of my favorite videos in the whole class that we're gonna watch soon. So we have to get to it. Okay, because that's gonna be changed. Now, in terms of weapons of warfare, this is when United States inventions began to combat those German inventions. And one of the biggest ones is airplanes. The Wright brothers are not an invention. So, now, if you don't know about the Wright brothers, Jacob, so the Wright brothers create the very first airplane. Now, I will tell you, there is controversy over this. So if you're one of my Bethanies who might say that nothing's as it seems, if any of you watched the opening ceremonies to the Brazil Olympics, they actually had a plane fly, and you were like, why is that a plane? In Brazil, they believe they invented the first airplane. So there you go, throwing a wrench in for Bethany there. She can start a trend there. Now, when we talk about the Wright brothers, though, the Wright brothers, according to America, create the very first airplane in North Carolina. Flew for 40 seconds and therefore became like the very first airplane, and we began to rapidly expand since then. I believe this was in like 1902, and we used airplanes in the military during World War I. Now, if you've ever seen Wonder Woman, who's seen Wonder Woman? What time period is it set? World War I. No, it wasn't. Now, in this movie, and here's why I can tell you and how you can prove it's World War I. If you look at this picture, which if you don't know, he's a pilot, you might see this fancy thing right here. What is this? The flag of, it's not Turkey yet, the Ottoman Empire. So, and I don't remember if it was Nick that mentioned it last time or who mentioned it, but the Ottoman Empire falls right at the beginning of the war. That's how you can tell that this is World War I, is simply because of that flag, which I'm sure all of you noticed as he walked quickly to go steal stuff. Okay. No, Bethany, bad. Yes. Okay. All right, listen. Okay. Now, in real life, though, as much as in this movie, it seemed like airplanes were like stellar cool and like you could do cool dogfights and stuff, that was not actually true at the beginning. You see, airplanes weren't that stable. And they didn't have seatbelts a lot of the times. And so what happened is, at the very beginning, as people began to turn, what happens to you? Boo, and you fall. Now, after this, they put seatbelts in. But now you have another problem. Do these have, like, guns on this that you can see? No? What about bomb dropper things? No? Those are actually called Mavericks, but I didn't want to be fancy.
What was the point of an airplane if it didn't have a gun or
because it goes faster and it can go from the air. So here's what you do. You have a nice little stack of bombs behind your seat. You reach behind for the bomb. You drop it off the side. Now, was this super effective? Not in our terms, but it was a major impact. By World War II, that's really where we get the big dogfights, is because we have a lot better technology during that time. Now, other things that we had was, this is, okay, well, you guys are spoiling it. I was going to say, is this a blimp? And you say, no, Miss Ray. So, no, this is a Zeppelin. Now, a Zeppelin was actually the German flights. So actually what they would do is they would load these guys up with bombs, and they would actually bomb London with these Zeppelins, and it's called the Zeppelin raids. So wasn't just planes, and I know it sounds really weird this time, but it was almost slightly more accurate because your plane didn't fall or crash, and it was a lot more secure. Now, in terms of other very exciting things that happened, we include the flamethrower. Now, what country used the flamethrower most popularly? Anybody know? Germany. Okay. Now, Germany creates the flamethrower. Now, this flamethrower, by the way, how it works is you have this fun little pack of pure gasoline. Not just diesel gasoline that you get at the store. No, my friends. 100% diesel gasoline, which if you don't know, is flammable. Really, really, really flammable. And what they would do is they would set entire forests, or like where the trenches are, on fire. Additionally, another way, and this is the more dangerous one, is what they would do is they would like sneak up to the trenches, put it over the trenches, and set fire to the trenches and the people down below. So you actually are literally just watching people like walk around burnt. Now, some of you are like, but Miss Ray, I still don't understand what a flamethrower is and how intense it is. Well, luckily for you, some dudes, no, let's not spread that rumor. No, I did not. Actually, flamethrowers, if you didn't hear, the guy from Tesla created a handheld flamethrower that he sold for $15 each. And it was, yes. Now, he didn't create Tesla. Okay. He's some rich guy. He's a rich dude that is involved with Tesla. He sent Tesla to you. Okay. Yes, he did. All right, now, okay, listen. So, we're going to watch this video of some dudes in England who made a flamethrower. And this is pretty spitting image of what it would be like. So just kind of picture yourself being like in this flamethrower. Okay?
Don't they now like mix the gasoline with other stuff?
Yeah. And you can't really have like this way anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get excited about flamethrowers. Oh. I forgot. Me and Ashton had a problem at lunch where I played the music really loud, so I muted it. Okay.
In 1916, Livings added diesel to his fuel mix.
The diesel's in there to give it extra thickness and carry, and also to make sure it stays alight when it reaches the German trenches. So some of it's alight as it's going over there, it lands in the trenches, and then it catches fire, so whoever's in the trenches.
If they succeed in igniting this mixture of diesel and kerosene, the effect will be as close to the original weapon as we can possibly get.
Okay, Tom, keep it going, you up!
Okay. So now do you guys realize how terribly awful flamethrowers really were? Yes.
That's not how big actually. They're like smaller.
It depends. So as a handheld, yeah, it was smaller. But they didn't just have handheld ones. They had what you kind of saw there. Those were the ones that burnt down like entire forests. The majority of them were the handheld ones. The other problem that you had too, if you had a handheld, what happens if your like little thingamajig explodes? Yeah, you're gone too. So they did do it as much. They did both. The issue that they ended up having with the flamethrower actually was the fact that it used a lot of gas. And when you are on rations and you don't have a lot of gas in your country, can you have a flamethrower? No, you can't. Yeah.
So is 100% like diesel illegal now, or?
it exists if you make it. The problem is we don't make that anymore. Next time you go to the gas tank, you'll see like the little numbers that nobody cares about. And you're like, oh, what are those numbers for? That's the percentage of like gasoline in that gas and how it's diluted. And we are extremely diluted now with water. Because what happens if you're running with 100% diesel and you're driving down the truck and there's a spark? Your thing is blowing up.
And plus it wastes less.
Your car's, yeah. And so we don't really have it anymore. Now flamethrowers nowadays, I know that the Tesla one, that flamethrower was only like 5% gasoline. And that was like a little miniature handheld one.
That's so cool.
Yes. Hold on.
Because like I heard this thing, like if you take a match and drop it into a bucket of diesel, it won't light.
Probably. I think it needs a spark. I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I'm not a genius on gasoline.
Are you aware that there was one soldier for every 4 inches of trench?
No, but now I do know.
That was part of my assignment.
Yes. No, I figured that. I don't know if it had to do with Jacob's comment. But that's okay. No, that's really smart. Okay, if you want, let me know. Because I truly have never been asked that question ever before. But that's very deep. Good. Okay. Now, another thing that you might realize. Who is this? Darth Vader. And in German, this means? Father. It technically means father. Now, when you see Darth Vader, though, okay, that is a German word in Star Wars from the 70s. Okay? And then you have these guys. Stormtroopers. Exactly. And you're like, but Miss Ray, what does this have to do with anything? Oh, it's not just representative. It is World War I. So, okay, listen. It's actually literally it's on there right now. So, in Germany, though, they did have on the front lines these guys that were called stormtroopers. Now, these were like the elite class of guys that went in. They were the first ones to go in. They were kind of like the SEAL team, right? Now, you might say, though, well, that's just a name. Okay, ready? Look at their helmets. Oh. Ready? It's the same. Okay, yes.
Wait, so stormtroopers were the elite. Why in Star Wars can they not hit anything?
Okay, well, here's my question for you. If you go from World War I and World War II, are Germany and America good guys or bad guys? Is Germany, according to most Americans, good guys or bad guys? Bad guys. So why on earth would you want to make them good? By making them be skilled at things. You want to make them look as bad as they can. And we'll get to that when we get to Korea in terms of propaganda. But they wanted to make them look bad. Hold on. Okay, now it's not all related. It's just Germany. Okay. Hold on.
Based off of both World War I and II, or just World War I?
It has World War I imagery. But that's because a lot of our anti-German sentiments began in this war.
Wait.
But stormtroopers were also used in World War II.
Was stormtroopers like Germany soldiers or American soldiers?
They were Germany soldiers. Germany's front line. They were basically the Navy SEALs of Germany.
Okay.
Except not Navy, Army.
And isn't it like in Star Wars where like the Empire is supposed to represent Germany or something?
Yeah. There's a lot of symbolism. You can read a whole book. There's like a whole like line of books that's all about why Star Wars is a history movie, basically. Yes. Now, obviously, into today, when you get into like episodes 7 and 8, it kind of like, as it goes along, it drifts away from this whole Germany thing.
Does this mean you can watch Star Wars in?
Sure. After school, on your own time. And The Wizard of Oz. And eventually Mickey Mouse cartoons. It'd be great. Okay. No, we can't just watch Wonder Woman.
But, like, what about after the 1800s?
Maybe. Okay. All right, now getting into the home front. This is a starred important section. If you look at your key, and I'm not saying look at your key concepts, this is like me just saying things. If you look into your key concepts, there's one single page on World War I. One of the major key concepts is all about the home front. Okay? Now, when we talk about the home front, there's a couple of things that we're talking about. Now, the very first thing that's very important that I want you to circle is the word propaganda. Very important. Now, I actually kind of want to go what she was talking about earlier about fake news. When we talk about why they did this, it was to make you feel something. So with propaganda, again, are we going to solidify and know for sure this propaganda is real or not? No. But we're going to believe it because our government makes an organization to convince you to go to war and to help in the war. So this was called the Committee of Public Information, and they make propaganda cartoons. Now, these are going to be those violent ones that you see, or those ones that are like tearing at your heartstrings, right? If you don't go in, these monsters are going to take over. One thing that you'll notice a bunch of times is you'll see this word bonds or war loans. We don't have those anymore, but what they used to be is when America couldn't fund a war, you could actually pay the government money to fund their war, and then when the war was over, you got like 1,000% back. It was like the stock market. You invested in your government, and when the war was over, you got the money back. So you could just go to like Smith's and just buy war bonds, and you're like, okay, I'm spending $5 now, but I know later on I'm going to get $100 for my government, and it worked really well.
What if you lose the war?
Well, we've never had that happen when we've had war bonds and war loans, so I don't know what would happen. In theory, your government would still pay you back. Okay. Now, if we don't have a government anymore, now we're getting to some now we're getting to a bunch of what ifs. But we never had that happen. But according to the war loans, as far as I'm aware, they had to pay you back. So, now, anyway, so as we go along with these, if you ever see any of these political cartoons, usually if it looks oldish, think of it as World War I. Now, I will point something out about this right one, and it's hard to see with this darn light. But this is actually starts into the whole I want you thing. This was the beginning one for World War I. If you look better and if it was more clear, she actually looks like Drew Barrymore.
If you look better.
Because it's messed up. Yes.
So was this the war that was the birth of Captain America?
No, we're gonna have a whole lesson on that. Wait 2 weeks. Yeah. So Captain America is actually World War II propaganda, but we will do that in just a little bit. Okay.
Can we watch a scene from Captain America?
Yes, sir. It's in the PowerPoint if you wait. Okay. Now another thing that ends up happening as well, though, is they're also going to advocate for you doing something at home. So now it's not just our boys over there are working; it's at home. Now, if you want a really good synthesis, which they don't have anymore, compare it to nowadays. We have soldiers over there, and half of us don't even think about those soldiers each day. In fact, I would say more than half. I'd say 99% of you. And so the reality is that this war was unlike any other war, especially World War I and II. Every day, you were doing different things to be able to prevent other bad things from happening in order to be able to increase it better for yourself. Now, this was done with a lot of things. Now, examples of this include victory gardens. Next to, doesn't this make you feel really confident and oh yay, it's happy, right? This was for those factory workers. Remember how when you guys go to work and you guys are I wish I could get off right now. I have 2 hours left. I'm bored. Customers are annoying me. I just want to sit in my corner, not do anything, right? And you're just lackadaisically going along. Well, what if you get this bomb that you're doing and you're bored, bored, bored. Oh, I missed the pin in this one. Bored, bored, bored. Yeah, what happens when they go and get that? Yeah, you just killed a soldier. Hope you can have that on your conscience. Wow. Yeah, that's what they did. And in World War II, and it gets worse in World War II because it makes you feel really trashy in World War II. You're if I'm not doing something right now, I'm failing as a system, right? So this whole thing was to get you to do something. Now, on the left, and I don't remember if I put it on there, but if you will put down the word war rations. Okay. Now, when we get into this war, this is the first time we are going to have legalized rationing. Now, legalized rationing was where, according to the law, you, for instance, could not eat meat on this day, or you could not have sugar, or different things like that. And so you have the very first ration system. Now, the reasoning for this is if we have a food shortage, it's more important for our soldiers to have food than for us to have food, so we would give it away. Now, luckily for all of you, I have this right here that I'm going to pass around. Be nice to it. Okay? No. this is a list from your government that basically says, here's what you should do to help your boys out when they're in the war. So it says basically, our problem is to feed the Allies and our own soldiers abroad by sending them as much food as the most concentrated nutritious value in the least shipping space. What can you do to help win this war? So this was basically how you could be a soldier without actually being on the front lines. And it worked. People began to ration. People began to not drive. People began to not use rubber because they needed the rubber for the war. People stopped using pencils. Schools stopped having paper. That'd be nice, right? Because then you guys wouldn't have to do anything. But this was all ideas to be able to help out, to be able to make it so that we could be able to win the war.
They didn't have Chromebooks?
No, they didn't have Chromebooks back then. A couple years in the future, maybe World War II. Now, this was the idea of what's called a victory garden. Now, this is really important here in Utah as well, because you see this like trend with gardening in Utah. If you notice, the gardening in Utah really upswings around the time of World War I, especially the churches around here also start encouraging it around World War I. Why? Because you could be able to grow food. You would bring it to your local government agency. They would then take that food and they would send it overseas. So another thing as well is this provided you free meals. So gardening massively rises. Next to victory gardens, which should be on your paper, I would write also World War II. That term can be used in both. Most of this stuff, other than the word CPI, propaganda yes, but CPI no, is also in World War II. We mirror a lot of the same things. Okay. Just more propaganda, fun stuff. Now, another thing that happens as well, and I don't remember if I put it on your paper or not, is the draft. Okay? Now, the draft, we had kind of the draft before in the Civil War, but this was the first time that we really had a big draft. If you don't know, by the way, the minute you turn 18, you need to make sure that you are signed up for the draft. It is actually against the law to not sign up for the draft. That's called draft dodging. So make sure you sign up for it. If you're a male, you should get a postcard in the mail that'll help you sign up. If you're a female, congrats. The law actually got repealed. Originally, this year, you were supposed to start registering for the draft, and they repealed that law.
I didn't know they did draft anymore.
Now, they do draft. However, the likelihood of us ever having a draft after 9/11 is so slim because we have such a large standing military. It would have to take, and I guess knock on wood, but it would have to take something really big to happen. Like, we're talking like a nuclear bomb that destroys all of our military bases. So, no, Bethany. But anyway, so the draft, yeah. On.
My stepmom is from Argentina, and she was really scared that my brother would have to enlist into the draft and we'd actually go. So she took my brother to Argentina to be born to be a citizen without dual citizenship, so he's not eligible for the draft.
That is so fascinating. So men between the ages of 18 and 26 have to sign up for the draft. You get a draft number, and if you say, oh, I'm sure there's bajillions of us here in America, they're going to not just forget about little old me, you actually cannot sign up for college unless you're registered for the draft. So, again, this is for males, so you want to apply. So, okay, listen. More than likely, all of your parents registered for the draft if they're male. But you have to register for the draft, and when you go to college, if they find out that you didn't register for the draft, they can actually revoke your college acceptance because it's required by law. So it's actually a felony to draft dodge. Now, there's a difference between if you turn 18 and it's like you were born at 5 p.m. and it's 5:01 and the police show up at your door and say, why haven't you signed up for the draft? That's not what happens. Usually they wait a year, so they give you till you're 19, and then you get a fancy little mail. It's like, hey, you forgot the draft. Sign up. And then the next mail is, hey, you forgot the draft. Did you know it's a felony? And then the next one is they come to your door. Now, I've had one student who has had that happen to them before. But what happened was that they were signing up for like an Ivy League, and they had never signed up for the draft. And with the whole background check thing, that's how they found that out. And so you just can't do it. You actually it's funny because technically you're not supposed to be employed either if you're not signed up for the draft. If they do a background check, they can deny you because of that. So online, you get this cool little draft number. You put your first name, last name, and your social in. You get this nice little paper that you can bring to people and say, yes, I'm signed up for the draft. And once you turn 26, I should say 27. Technically, 11:59 is the last year of your 26, or the day before your 27th birthday. You are no longer in the draft. But the biggest thing is the likelihood of this ever being needed.
It's just an extra.
Would need a very disastrous thing to happen. Like, we're talking, like, it'd be worse than Pearl Harbor. I mean, you would literally have to have bombs dropped on every single major and kill. Because we have, I think it's something like 500,000 standing military? Yeah.
Isn't something like, didn't Trump somehow get out of the draft?
Yeah. No. Now, let's talk about this really quick. So, you do have to sign up for the draft. It's required by law. However, there are ways to get out of the draft. Now, here in Utah, there was this really funny thing that happened in Vietnam. Magically, in the years of Vietnam, Mormon missionaries skyrocketed during Vietnam. And you could say it was because they wanted to preach the gospel, which I'm sure they did, or it was also a way to get out of the draft, because you could get out of it. Now, in terms of this is going into Vietnam, but in terms of a sad story, over when I was at Murray, there was this guy there that always came and spoke about Vietnam. He was one of 8 siblings. All 7 of the 8 siblings went on a mission. One of them didn't get his papers in on time, was drafted, and he's the one who died. So when we talk about, like, people really did see it as life and death. Donald Trump did say a couple of months ago that Mitt Romney dodged the draft. He dodged the draft because he went on a mission. And so what happened is that was one way to get out of it. But draft dodging itself, the felony, is when you, like, escaped Canada. And so one of the big things that happened after Vietnam is all these men went to Canada, and when they were like, oh, the war's over, they came back and were arrested at the border for draft dodging. And so there's every couple of years there's this talk of, should we pardon all the draft dodgers, because there's still people living in Canada that dodged the draft. Now, were there also people who accidentally shot their feet to get out of the draft? Yes. But the only way you could technically draft dodge, like as in breaking the law, is if they catch you, if you flee to another country, and if you burn your draft card.
I thought that they pardoned everybody in Vietnam who did draft dodge.
They did and didn't. Because one of the things that there was a stipulation was if you only left, then you're pardoned. But if you also committed other crimes while you were gone, you were not. And the problem is draft dodging in itself carries a lot more crimes. So what happened is a lot of people had, like, misdemeanors. So if they had a misdemeanor made for a drug charge or something, that counts towards not being able to come back. Yeah.
Have you seen the movie Across the Universe?
Yes, that is draft stuff. But yes. That whole movie is an anti-Vietnam movie. Yeah.
Did you say women are now required to?
They were, and then it was repealed. So you guys were supposed to be the first graduating class that women were supposed to sign up for the draft, and they changed the law. They repealed it because they said that there's not enough evidence that women need to sign up for the draft. So, it's the same reason why up until last year women weren't allowed to be in all ranks of the military. It's the same thing. And then last year they passed a law, and so they allowed females to be, like, especially the Navy SEALs was one of them. I had, back at my old school, my kids, like, most of them weren't going to college, and so we were trying to find them career solutions. Hey, if you want to hear this, it's an interesting story. But we always had an Army recruiter come in every year to kind of tell them about being in the Army and stuff. And it wasn't the Army, but I'm not going to say what branch of military it was. We had a recruiter come in, and this was when all this was changing, and the law said you must now allow females in. And he basically told my class of 75% females that he would never want to work with a woman. And that he would never allow a woman into their field. And if they were, they would work in the kitchen. And so that recruiter was kicked off campus and he was banned from the district. So, yeah. Anyways, Kate, moving on. All right, now this is the one that is the most commonly referenced one out of all of these is the Sedition Acts. Okay? Now, if you remember in the Alien and Sedition Acts, which was a great historical context if you want to use it for an essay, but the Alien Sedition Acts way back in the War of 1812, you guys remember that one was the one that said it was illegal to speak poorly of the government. Well, we bring that same exact thing in here with the Sedition Acts. The Sedition Acts basically says you cannot talk negatively about the war. You cannot reveal secrets about the war. Everything is quiet. Now, this was not just America. Britain in particular also had laws that said that you could not talk poorly. So what happened was that when you would send mail between, every single mail letter was opened, it was read, anything that was bad was scratched out, or you were literally sent something that says you're not allowed to send letters because you're speaking poorly. Yes?
You mean that's free speech? Yeah, isn't that a breach on your first?
Well, that's a great question. That's what happens with the Supreme Court case decision, which won't be in this class, most likely. It'll be, but AP Gov, that's one of the ones that you guys talk about in there.
Can we just like stop? Yeah, with the one with the Pentagon.
Yeah, that's a different one. Mr. Reed said you guys would talk about it. Maybe not. Okay. Shh. Okay, listen. Shh. Listen. So when we talk about this, you would get things like this. So what this says is the communication return this cover constitutes breach of the defense of the realm regulations. The communication will be allowed to proceed if the passage or passages referring to, and this is the Zeppelin raids, are omitted. So if you talk poorly or if you speak about something bad, it's omitted. So it's one of those things where it's like everything's happy now, right? I was in the trenches and I ate some food that was delicious. And you can't talk about anything. So if you write a letter to somebody and you say, you know what, life in the trenches sucks, I think America's losing this war, guess what? It's not making it. It's either stopped and returned to you or it magically disappears. It's not sent.
This is just like, can we stop? Because,
no, that goes into what we do.
Like,
I know. Well, here's the thing. It went to the Supreme Court, and this was deemed illegal. So, for the record, you can't do this. All right. Okay, listen. Almost done, guys. Almost done. So, this is what one of your letters would look like. So, if it were to go all the way to your person, this is what your letters look like. It omits everything. Right now, fingers crossed, if I win the bids on eBay, I'm trying to get one of these. So we'll see tomorrow. That's when the bidding ends. But I may have a letter that I can show you of one that's been crossed out. Like a legit letter. But currently I'm number one bidder, so we'll see what happens.
How much?
Right now it's at $7.
Nice.
But I'm the only bidder, so we'll see what happens.
I thought it was going to be like 50, and I was like...
No, but I found this really fun. Okay, we're going to skip this one for right now so we can end the war. So we're going to skip this one right now because we got a little bit behind from earlier. So I have to kind of like push along here. All right, now, anti-war dissenters. All you got to know is common sense. People who didn't like the war. People said we should be neutral. Why are we fighting in Europe? This has nothing to do with America. That all becomes with that anti-war dissent. And a lot of this, if you would circle this word socialists, we had massive nativism. People were very fearful of what was going on. People were fearful of people who were either socialists. They were fearful of the socialists coming over, which was Germany. They were fearful of the labor unions coming over. People were fearful that we were going to become communist. I mean, it was a giant, giant mess at this time. Okay. Yes. Okay. Now, let's end the war. So the very first thing that ends the war is we start what's called the Hindenburg Line. Now, the Hindenburg Line was a 100-mile line of trenches, and it was basically what held the border between Germany and the Allies. Now, one of the big things that happens in this battle, as well as the Battle of the Somme, is the very first use of tanks. Now, tanks are created during this time, but there's a problem. They're long, and they are skinny. And the problem is this stuff happens because they didn't make a tank that was really accurate. So again, planes and tanks, while they become very essential later on, were kind of a little bit of a failure in World War I itself. Now, through the use of tanks, though, and through our trench warfare, we were able to break the Hindenburg Line, and now it's a straight shot, in theory, into Berlin, but they end up signing the armistice before they reach Berlin. Now, this brings us to the very last major battle, and one of your key concepts, by the way, says, why did America intervening pretty much change the scape of the warfare? Now, we talked about adding in money. We've talked about adding weapons in, people in. But really, it was examples of really great warfare by the Americans. And this occurs at a battle called the Battle of Belleau Wood. Now, the Battle of Belleau Wood is it's inside of France. And here's what happens. By the way, the most popular out of all the weapons is this weapon right here. Now, this was the American one that was the most popular, but if you notice, what is at the front end of that weapon? A bayonet, yes.
Can you spell the
Belleau Wood, Belleau, and wood is spelled like wood. Belleau Wood. Now, it's two separate words. Now, what happens, though, is that they're going to take this as the Americans, and they are going to show the Germans who's boss. What happens in this battle is, imagine this. First off, we have snipers, yes?
I'm just wondering, I don't know a lot about guns, but, does something, how do you, name it? What is it?
Well, Springfield, so this first name right here is the maker of the gun. So this is Springfield Armory, which is a gun manufacturer. So that's first. So Colt, M&P, those are all the brands. Then over here is the model number. It depends on the gun. Like a Glock, for example, all their handguns are numbers between 1 and 50. And then the first 20 numbers are full-size guns. And then the last 10 numbers are compact guns. So it depends on those individual manufacturers. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now this one, though, is easy. The M stands for military. And the 1903 is the first year it was created. A lot of weapons, if it has the word M or P in it, means military and police, which means they're made for that. Now, when we get into this battle, though, the first thing we have is snipers. Now, here's a really cool part about this. This was the Marine Corps, which, by the way, Marine Corps, you can use that in an essay, and it works really well. The Marine Corps, if you don't know where the Marine Corps has their base where they train, it's in the woods. So, number one advantage, they know this place. It's similar to their home. Second advantage, they're really good at shooting guns, in particular sniping. So they get into the trees, and as the Germans come along, they begin to snipe. But this is where it gets really intense and exciting. You see, all of these military forces, again, we have trench warfare, stationary warfare. You're not coming to me, I'm coming to you. Or everyone's saying the same. Well, here's what happens. All the Americans snipe. And once they're out, they jump out of the trees, they take their bayonets, and they start stabbing them. Now, imagine as a German, remember how we talked about the advancement of warfare? Imagine going back 50 years of warfare. All of a sudden, it's archaic. You don't know how to react. And so this battle becomes so symbolic of the Americans' ability to be able to use what they know at home, abroad, and also to use especially hand-to-hand combat in order to be able to win. And we still have this today with Navy SEALs. Yes?
A little turned around. This is Belleau Wood, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Now, after this battle, though, the Marine Corps becomes synonymous around the world. They end up getting nicknamed what's called the Devil Dogs, and they get nicknamed this because of that ferocious manner that they're able to win. Now, if, by the way, you ever go into the Marine Corps and know anybody in the Marine Corps, if you want, what you can do is you can actually go over to France. In Belleau Wood, they have this dog right here, this bulldog, and it's a fountain, and it's tradition that if you're in the Marine Corps and you're a Marine, you go and you drink from the fountain, and it's symbolic of those who had this happen in Belleau Wood, because Belleau Wood is what made the Marine Corps what it is today. Now, because of this, and because this really became synonymous with the Americans doing the finite, this is the end of the war, France actually renamed this, and it's actually now called in English the Wood of the Marine Brigade. So if you ever go to France, you can go to that and you can remember the Marine Corps in World War I. Now, additionally as well, all of these men in the Marine Corps received the highest award in France in the military. It is the only non-French that has ever received this award. So a huge thing, and that's, again, I know France doesn't like us a lot, but they really like our Marine Corps because of what happened in this. They like us in the world wars, basically. So, we want to be able to end this. And Woodrow Wilson is going to propose what's called the 14 points. This is a double star term. Very important term. Now, when Woodrow Wilson proclaims this 14 points, basically, this is how we should be able to become peaceful. Now, these two right here are the really important ones that you need to be able to know, other than the fact that it was Woodrow Wilson. So, first off, countries need to be autonomous and industrial. This one is important because nobody else likes it. He did not believe in that we should completely destroy their economy. He said, you know what? Let's do this instead. Let's just be able to let them be able to rebuild, have a good government system, and everything will be okay. This one right here, though, the League of Nations, that is another double star term. Now, when we talk about the League of Nations, this is what we're talking about, okay? Basically, if you want to put next to it, the easiest way I like to remember it is a, it's not modern, it's the other term, the beginnings of the UN. Think of it as the UN, but really dysfunctional.
Vintage dysfunctional.
Vintage dysfunctional UN. That's a really fancy way. You should put that in an essay. That sounds cool. Now, when we talk about the League of Nations, this thing was a failure. In theory, every country around the world joins this League of Nations, similar to the UN. And when you join this League of Nations, the goal was to be able to bridge the gap and make it peaceful. Now, a lot of people saw this, though, from Woodrow Wilson as, first off, this is not our bridge to build, and second off, is this not just us possibly wanting more economic opportunities, more trade opportunities, anything along those lines. Now, here are all the countries that joined the League of Nations following the war. So next to this, next to the League of Nations, I would say enacted, but not by the U.S., and that one's really crucial. So Woodrow Wilson comes up with the idea of the League of Nations, and yet we don't join it. Now, why didn't we join it? Because you can see from here, we're one of the only countries in the world that doesn't join the League of Nations. Now, why? Wilson's idea was a League of Nations. He creates it. He helps function it. But according to our law, a president cannot join or make a treaty with somebody else. Congress does. Congress went to go vote, and they lost the vote by like 2 votes. So Wilson creates the League, but doesn't even get to join it. Now, the League of Nations, though, was a pretty much complete failure. I mean, when we talk about how dysfunctional this thing was, imagine if Mr. Bingham calls you in because you've been, selling drugs at school. Okay? And he brings you in, and he's like, oh, I'm so mad at you. I can't believe you did that. And you're just, sitting there waiting to be punished. And he's like, okay, so can you just promise me not to do it again? And then you're like, oh, are you not suspending me? And he's like, what? I can't really suspend you, and I can't get you in trouble, and I can't call the police, but could you just not do it again? What is that person going to do?
Do it again.
Free-for-all. Expand your marketplace. Because if you don't have somebody who's strict, it's kind of like when I see this with, students, you sometimes have parents that kind of, let you guys do whatever you want, and sometimes that ends up being, a bad negative thing. This kind of happens with the League of Nations. They had zero real power to stop anything. All they could say is, can you not do that anymore? Now, they did have a rule. They said that if every single country, which let's remind ourselves that there's 80 of them, if every single country votes on an act, now you can enact it. Well, here's the thing. We still have alliance systems. And how easy is it to get 80 countries to all agree on the same thing? Never happens. They actually don't pass any laws. It's kind of like a governing board that can't do anything. It's like having a police force that can't arrest people for breaking the law. They can just say, please don't do it again. That's what happens with the League of Nations. Now, the final thing in the Treaty of Versailles, which is a double star term. A lot of your key concepts, by the way, for World War I involve the end of the war and how the war ended. So, the Treaty of Versailles ended World War I. And the biggest thing that you need to circle is failure, 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 failure. You should not think of World War I and say it was, or the Treaty of Versailles and say it was a success. Also, next to the Treaty of Versailles, you can say directly led to World War II, and you can either put HC. Pretty much any lesson or any essay that you do on World War II, you can put in there Treaty of Versailles as a historical context. Now, what did it do? It accepted all war guilt for only Germany. So remember how we said that there were 3 partners in this war? Yeah, guess what? And don't put your stuff away yet. Only one country gets any guilt, and that's Germany. 2, collapses the German economy. Let me explain basically what happens. They say you get a fine. And you want to know how much you're going to get? You're going to get 230 billion marks of a fine. Equivalent to today, we calculated out to today's money. That's the equivalent of 14 and 36 zeros behind it. That amount of dollars. And, by the way, you have to pay it in 3 months. And, by the way, you can't take out any loans to pay it. Oh, yeah, and your economy has collapsed because you lost a war. And half of your factories have been bombed. How likely are they going to be able to pay this back? Not likely. The Treaty of Versailles, by the way, was finally paid back. It was paid back in 2013. That was the year that Germany paid back 100% of their war debts from the Treaty of Versailles. 36 zeros after it in today's money. Yes.
Wait, who got the money that they paid?
The Allies. So America, the United States, and France. We will talk about why it put us into more debt in a second. Now, well, there's a reason why the Great Depression begins, and we will talk about it. Not yet. Give me 2 more seconds. So the Treaty of Versailles, though, is a basic total failure. I mean, this thing was awful. Now, when we talk about this, so this is Wilson bringing along the Treaty of Versailles. He's like, oh, yay, my Treaty of Versailles. But guess what? This thing is a rattered-tattered mess. And basically, as you can see in this picture, eventually it's going to immediately lead Germany into World War II because of the fact that Germany and Hitler, and there's the reason why Hitler rises, is because of this. Now, listen closely for the directions, okay? First off, the thing that you picked up on the Treaty of Versailles, I'm going to go ahead and nix that assignment. So if you already started it, nifty, give it back or throw it away. So, and if somebody could text Abby and let her know that too. Yes. So your full Treaty of Versailles, as well as the half sheet, is going to be put back where it came from. No. So that's one thing. Now the other thing, though, your brochure needs to be finished by next class. So that's your homework, okay? Finish your brochure. There's only 2 things, which are the effects, 1 and 2. Treaty of Versailles papers, please drop them off before you leave so I can use them for the other classes because they will definitely get there. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, finish the brochure. That's your homework. Treaty of Versailles you can put back. If you turn in next class, I'll be like, oh, you weren't listening. Okay? Don't do the Treaty of Versailles homework. Please give it back to me. Have a great day. Thank you. Please come look at these. There's a bunch of no-names still over here. Yes?
So, like, you know that day when I left and it was, like, super awkward? Well, I didn't turn this in.
Okay, can you turn it in?
Yeah.
I was thinking that was probably why.
And also, like, we got this that day.
Yep, that was also due.
Can I just
Yes.
Thank you.
Please make sure you come and check the no-names, please.
So I redid that public assignment.
Yeah, I fixed it.
Do you have it? Did you fix it?
Last night?
Okay, maybe it's just not showing up yet.
Let's go check my computer, and if not, I'll put it in right now.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Ms.
Oops. I should probably stop the